In this video, we are going to be talking about the Anunnaki. This is basically part of my series where I decide to meditate on the different aliens or interdimensional beings that exist out there in the universe. Given that we are about to go through disclosure, or we are in the beginning of disclosure right now, so I just want to touch on all of them. This is just my way of getting to know all of these beings myself, and of course everything that I learn myself I'm going to share with you. My name is Catherine. I'm a Reiki master, spiritual coach, and nurse practitioner. If you want to work with me, you can go to my website at catherineglassman.com, or you can email me at hello@catherineglassman.com. So today I decided to meditate on the Anunnaki, and that is how I get all of this information. It's just through meditation. So of course, if it resonates, then great. If not, that's okay too. So what I will share with you is that I think I may have had some preconceived notions about the Anunnaki, but I didn't know much about them. I knew that they were bigger, I guess. And then I also thought that they came from like a higher dimension because they were just so much more advanced than us. And so that's kind of what I thought. Now, I will say, I think I've shared this before on my channel, that I went to a music festival once and I interacted with what I believe to either be an alien or an alien hybrid. This experience was how I solidified that they for sure are on planet Earth. Okay, so I was at a music festival, and this was in the midst of my awakening. I was probably like a couple of years into my awakening by now. So I had been having out-of-body experiences. I was hearing voices. I was seeing things. I was developing mediumship abilities. Things were changing rapidly for me. And so when I was at this music festival, I had gone to this music festival multiple times and I just loved it. And plus it was just in my own backyard. So of course I would just go with friends, or I would go by myself and just meet friends because I would see a lot of people that I knew there. And so around this time, I was still maybe drinking a little bit, but not as much as I did for sure. So at this point, I would drink maybe like 1 to 2 drinks max, and that's it. I was a bartender previously, so I definitely could throw them back, but after my awakening, I drastically started to change my lifestyle. And so I'm at this music festival and I'm standing with a friend, and we're watching the stage of whatever artist is on, and we're in the far back to the right. That's kind of where I like to be anyways, just in the back a little bit. So if I want to dance, I have the freedom to do that. If I want to leave, I'm not packed in there. It's just a good space. And so we're just standing there watching the artist. I had a drink. Okay. I feel like this is important because it makes me feel like alcohol or substances of any kind were just not involved. And so I'm watching the stage, my friend is next to me, and I see this very large man come from the middle of the crowd, and he's walking out. Okay, so if I'm off to the right looking at the stage, he's in the middle of the crowd walking out towards like the middle back, I guess. He's just walking steadily just out, okay? And I'm watching him the whole time because he is massive. He's clearly the biggest human in that crowd, and it was very easy for me to just hone in on this massive human. And so he's walking out, and as soon as he gets out of the clearing, I can see his full body and just how he looks. And he looked like he had he just had an odd shape in general. He had an odd shaped head, and it kind of reminded me of like a Neanderthal type of look, kind of like a big lumpy forehead, long dark hair, and very broad shoulders. And his arms almost looked like they were like a little too long for his body, if that makes sense. It was almost as if like how gorillas kind of have like longer arms. That's what it kind of looked like. And he had a tan complexion. He sort of reminded me of Andre the Giant. Okay. So this is what the information that I'm gathering as soon as he steps out. And right when I'm gathering all this information, immediately the word alien popped into my head. And it was as if I said it while simultaneously seeing the word come across my head, like in my mind, right? I did not even finish saying this word in my head. And right when it like finished, he looks right at me. Okay. So he's walking out of this crowd, you know, and I'm over here. He's walking out of this crowd and I say alien and he looks right at me. Okay. Turns his body, looks straight at me. And then he starts walking towards me. Okay. Of all people in the crowd, he comes for me. So he's steadily walking because he's a big guy. And he gets closer and closer. And as he's getting closer, he's like huge. Okay. I'm 5'9", right? So he probably had to have been like 6'5". Yeah. 6'5", I feels pretty good. Big guy. Easily should have been like a football player or something, okay? And he gets up to me and I'm like, he's towering over me. I'm looking at him and he bends over and he says, "You have a beautiful smile." And then stands up and looks almost like over me, like he just looks up, very mechanically kind of, turns his body and walks away. Okay. I look at my friend and I was like, what was that? Okay. That had me messed up for the rest of the night. Okay. Didn't have another drink. I was trying to process that experience the whole time. And months went on and I was like, what was that? That's so like that. Clearly just, he looked like a human, but he also kind of didn't look like a human. He clearly read my mind. He read my mind of me calling him out. But why would I say alien? Why would that even come into my mind if he wasn't an alien? You know what I mean? Like, so all these questions. And then I come across this Instagram feed and it is, I think I have the picture somewhere. I think I've posted it on here before. If I find it, I'll post it. But it's basically of a tall blue alien holding a man with long hair. And the man in the picture looks exactly like the guy I saw. I believe that the caption is in Portuguese. It's in another language, but when I translated it, it said the Anunnaki. Okay. So this was my first introduction to the Anunnaki. Now, I have heard that they are human-like, but they're just bigger. And then I kind of assumed that they were from a higher dimension. When I was meditating about the like human genetics and like ancient Egypt, I think specifically is what I was meditating on. What I got was that the Anunnaki are responsible for creating humans. Okay. And that the story of Adam and Eve is true, but it wasn't necessarily the creator of the universe that created the human species. And this is just from my meditations, okay? And obviously I could be wrong about any and all of this. I'm just sharing what my experience was. What I saw is that it's kind of like how humans breed dogs. Okay. You know, there weren't that many different types of dogs back in the day, but now there's a bunch. Like Labradoodles, that was never a thing, right? Teacup pit bulls, that was never a thing. But humans have taken that into their own hands and they have made them that, okay? So it's like two things can be true at once. The teacup poodle can be God's creation, but it can also be at the hands of humans, okay? This is kind of how I see the story of Adam and Eve. It is God's creation, but at the hands of the Anunnaki. Okay. The story, now I didn't channel this. The story, if you look anything up, is that they came to planet Earth to mine gold, because on their planet, the gold was like it did something for like their atmosphere or something like that. And so they created humans as a slave race to mine the gold. I didn't get any of that, but that is the story. And so from what I've gathered in meditation is that the Anunnaki are the giants that are referred to in the book of Enoch. So the Nephilim, and apparently they're also mentioned in the book of Genesis. The story is that fallen angels came to the earth and mated with human women and then created the Nephilim. And that they were evil and they tried to destroy humans, and that's the biblical story. But what I got is that the Anunnaki are actually the Nephilim that they refer to in the Bible, okay? And they are massive. They are literal giants, huge human being looking like beings. And the vibe that I got, okay, for this particular meditation, I was trying to just get the information without having to go to a being of some sort. Because I'm trying to practice doing that rather than going to a being. And I've been able to do that, but I'm trying to do it a little bit more intentionally and more consciously. Because I feel like it's almost like, I'm gonna go off on a tangent, but it's almost like using tarot cards or like a tool of divination of some sort. I don't necessarily want to use a tool of divination, or I don't want to necessarily go through a being per se. I just want to get the information that is of the truth only. The truth for the highest good of all involved. That's always the intention, every single time. And so, but then I think I ended up just interacting with an Anunnaki, but I specifically asked for an Anunnaki that is of unconditional love, or comes from some sort of galactic order that is of the law of one, where everything is all one thing. Because if they abide by the law of one, then that means that they are unconditionally loving. Okay. So anyway, sorry. The basic energy that I get from the Anunnaki as a general species is that they are very stoic, and they are very powerful, and they are very, they're kind of pretentious, it feels like. Like, it does not surprise, and that they were the ones that were the ancient gods. So all of the mythology that exists all around the world when it comes to these gods, right? All of the polytheism that exists in the world is primarily because of them. So ancient Egypt, all of those gods, Anunnaki, not all, were all of them? I don't think it was all of them, but I think it was the majority of them. I have to ask. But yeah, Anunnaki. Greek mythology, Anunnaki. Okay. So kind of just all over the world. And so because they created humans, and because of their involvement of basically acting and behaving as gods to humans, they just have this air of just being pretentious and very self-absorbed. And it kind of has a very similar vibration to the way reptilians feel about humans, except it's a little less hateful and more just being better than us, basically. They view us as a weaker life form as well, just like the reptilians. They just like, we're just not that important. Obviously, we were created just to mine gold for them. And so, you know, the difference though between them and the reptilians is obviously not only are they just a completely different species, but there seems to be a little bit more respect for the galactic laws of the universe, or the law of one. There seem to have been events that have taken place on the planet and in the universe that have sort of put them in their place, and therefore they have somewhat respected that a little bit more than the reptilians. But the reptilians are they're just still at it to this day, just very trying to manipulate us, trying to destroy humanity from within, trying to convince us to behave in certain ways that destroy our own ascension and our own soul and well-being, so on and so forth. And so, for example, when I went to Egypt, this is how I started. This was another reason why I started to know that I was developing some sort of like weird psychic thing was happening to me. As I went to Egypt, and it's like everywhere I went, I could feel what actually happened there, which has never happened to me before. Now it's part of the way I choose places to go on vacation. I choose places that have some sort of mythology to it, and then I go there to find out if it really did happen or not. And it's just my opinion and it's just my experience, so it's all anecdotal, but at this point, I would much rather go based off of what I feel than what I'm told. And so anyway, I went to Egypt, and the story of Moses, just Moses's energy in general just started like coming at me full force. Moses, Moses, Moses. I didn't know who Moses was. I had no idea of the biblical story of Moses. None at all. Okay. I heard the name, and I think I've maybe seen a picture of him as like an old man with a beard. That's it. Okay. Had no idea that he wrote the 10 Commandments. Had no idea that all of that story took place in Egypt until I went to Egypt and felt his presence. Now, Egypt right now is primarily an Islamic nation, so they don't have pictures of Moses anywhere. They don't have stories of Moses anywhere. It's all Islam and then Egyptian history. So that's it. So it's a little weird that I was getting downloads from Moses. Anyway, what I got from that trip is that the story of Moses did indeed happen. And it was because the ancient gods, which were the Anunnaki, were masquerading as the creators of the universe. And because of that, they were enslaving other humans. We were just enslaved in some sort of way. But then, of course, at that time, it was like the Jewish people were enslaved. And there's a thing when it comes to being enslaved that the actual creator of the universe, source frequency, God, okay? There's something about slavery that God doesn't like. God is okay with, hunting for survival, for food, but there's something about slavery, there's something about taking over a group of people or taking over a species that goes against the balance. And so that tends to get corrected. And so that story is the story of one of those corrections. And I believe now that it was indeed like God or like the balance coming through to Moses to end that imbalance once and for all, which I believe is why Egypt is now in the state that it is in. It used to be this very advanced society and community and beautiful, and now it is what it is. It's a third world country. It's not, it's got a lot of history. So it's worth visiting for that reason. But when it comes to vacationing, I personally wouldn't recommend it. That's just me. And plus I'm a woman, right? So there's a karma thing happening there because they also treat women differently. And, you could argue that it is a little bit of like the slavery aspect. I'm not trying to get in trouble here, but hey, I went there firsthand, and as a woman, I wouldn't recommend it to any of my girlfriends to just go. I recommend going if you're a starseed and you want to know, you want to feel the history and you want to feel the truth, because it was going to the pyramid where I knew that it generated energy. As soon as I stepped in, I was like, this generates energy. And then come to find out that that's been proven through those like ultrasounds or whatever of the ground. Anyway, sorry. So because of events like that, the Anunnaki has learned to understand that if they behave in such a way that there will be a correction. And so I do not know the story of David and Goliath, but during this meditation, I got information that is a true story, and that I guess Goliath is the giant, that Goliath was actually an Anunnaki. And again, it's almost like God, or, you know, the monotheism aspect is coming through to prove that the Nephilim or the Anunnaki are not the gods. They never have been and they never will be, and they will always be put back in their place if they try to step out of bounds again. Okay? So fascinating. And so from what I understand, there are indeed hybrids of the Anunnaki that exists on the planet, which I think that Andre the Giant, probably he had to have been like a hybrid or a starseed of the Anunnaki. It makes complete sense to me. But you know, that's just me. But usually they're going to be very large people. A lot of time they seem to have longer hair. It just seems to be part of the aesthetic or the look. Very, very deep booming voices. And they just seem to have this, like, there's just no funny business. They're very stoic. And I guess it makes sense, right? Like if you're a giant and you're a literal giant looking down, I think that there probably would naturally be this level of feeling literally above other people, right? So I guess I can't really blame them, but you know, at the end of the day, they're not. It's just like humans looking down at a bug and being like, haha, I'm better than you, and just crushing them. Like, well, you're not. That is not the correct way to look at other species. The correct way to look at other species is to understand that we are all in one ecosystem together, and there is a balance, and we help one another out. There is not one that is better than the other. But yeah, because they spliced their genes, right, and created humans, and thus we end up having descendants basically from the Anunnaki, that when the pharaohs said, the ancient Egyptian pharaohs, when they said that they were direct descendants of these gods, they were not lying. Like, they actually were descendants of these deities and these interdimensional beings, but they were not God. And it wasn't until Akhenaten came in and basically is probably one of the first historical figures to introduce the idea of monotheism. But then this also tracks back with Greek mythology as well, because Zeus, who is depicted as a massive man, breeds with a human woman, I think, and then thus creates a demigod who is Hercules, right? Which Hercules ends up being a massive guy, very strong, okay? So and I'm sure that there are there's other mythology around the world that talk about giants and things. I'm sure, what's his name? Shiva, and is it Shakti from India or Hinduism? I'm sure they probably are just the Anunnaki as well, but I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I'm just speculating. So anyway, so then I asked if they come from a certain star system, and yes, they do come from like a star system or a planet, but I couldn't get the name. So I had to look it up, and apparently it is believed that they come from the planet Nibiru, I think, or Nibiru, I'm not really sure. But tell me that doesn't sound like the same planet from Star Wars. I think it's Naboo, okay? Star Wars has been trying to tell us this whole time, guys. So yeah, that's the connection I made, but I did not actually get the name of the planet or the star system, but that's what I found in research. Because you know me, I'm gonna do the meditation thing and then I'm gonna look up the stuff. So that's what I found. I then asked which dimension they primarily come from, because I was thinking that they came from like the 7th or 8th dimension. And what I got is that they come from the 4th dimension. That's it. The same as the reptilians, which makes sense because when I try to tap into their energy, it doesn't feel loving. It doesn't. It does not feel like the Pleiadians. The Pleiadians feel very warm and loving and just want to assist and be very helpful. And then angels, of course, they are very, very loving for the most part, right? Of course, you can have bad ones of each species, but the Anunnaki just kind of as a whole, they're just a little indifferent, it kind of feels like, and not even indifferent, they just feel like they're better than humans. But they don't necessarily mean harm, but they didn't necessarily mean good either. It kind of feels like while they were here and masquerading as gods among the humans, it was inevitable and natural for us to pick up knowledge and evolve because of them. And plus they needed us to evolve because it's kind of like training. I don't know why I keep using dog analogies, but it's like training a puppy, right? You want to train the puppy so that you can get the most use and the most well-behaved dog as it grows. I think it was kind of the same thing with humans. Like they needed us to evolve a little bit so that they could get the most use out of us. That is so sad to say, but that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from them. So now I did, after I got that basic gist, I did try to call in an Anunnaki of unconditional love that will only give me the truth for the highest good of all involved, okay? And I got like an energy in and it felt very big, but he didn't really have much to say. What he wanted to say is that yes, that was all correct about them. They got power hungry, just too full of power, and that's basically their downfall. What he wanted to make very clear is that I think one of my questions was, how would a human know if they are truly working on the side of God? How do we know that it's truly the creator of the universe that we are listening to and that we are working for versus some being that is so powerful that it can come off as if it's God? And it reminded me of a freaking Simpsons Halloween special where Lisa loses her tooth and she decides to put it in a petri dish and she's gonna do it something for like a science project. But Bart comes in the room and is like messing with her and he has a balloon on his head and he rubs his balloon and he shocks the tooth. And then overnight it creates like a civilization, like a human, little tiny human civilization. And then every night it evolves and it becomes more advanced. But of course, these little beings in this little petri dish with this tooth, when they see Lisa, they think that she is a god. So, of course, if a massive giant were to show up and be like, I'm God and you must obey me, I think a lot of us would not only probably soil ourselves, but then after that, we'd probably be like, yep, that's got to be God, because I don't know who else can pull this off, Of course, I after seeing what I've seen, I'm like, no, that's not God, guys. But, I just don't blame the ancient Egyptians, and I don't blame the polytheism. I don't blame them for thinking that these are gods, because they seem to be very, very powerful. And what this Anunnaki told me, he said, one way that you can tell if you are working on behalf of God is when you are working on the side of freedom. If you are trying to provide freedom for a particular group of people, and this person claims to be getting messages from God and they are freeing people, that is a good sign that they truly are getting messages from the one true God. Because the one true God knows that everything in the universe is its creation. And so why would God want any of its creation to be enslaved by another one of its creation? Because it's essentially God. Everything is God. So it doesn't make sense for one thing to just be enslaved by another aspect of it. So then he gave me examples. And the one example that came through very quickly and easily was Moses. That's how we know that Moses truly was getting messages from the one true God, because he was trying to free the Jewish people. And his opponent was the Pharaoh, who believed he was a descendant of one of the ancient Egyptian gods, which he very well could have been, but he was acting from a place of greed and trying to, build his temples or whatever he was trying to do. He was acting from a selfish place, and that's why he had the Jewish slaves. And so, of course, that balance needs to be restored, and Moses was the one that was called in to restore that balance. And so all those plagues, from what I've gathered, really did happen, and as a result, Egypt is now paying the karma for all of that happened by being in the state that it's in now. And that actually makes sense, because Iraq, apparently, from what I looked up, is where the ancient Mesopotamian, I think, which is where the Sumerian tablets were found, which talks about the Anunnaki. That area, I believe, resides in Iraq. But Iraq is also very third world country-esque, right? Like, it just, and I'm not trying to be rude, but it just seems like there is, Anyway, I'm gonna move on. So Moses was one example. Another example is Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc believed that because she was fighting on the side of France, because England, like the King of England, was trying to take over the French crown. And she was getting messages, she believed she was getting messages from God and from saints, that she was to help lead the resistance so that the King of England couldn't take over France, so that France could still remain its own independent country. And sure enough, she helped with one particular battle that helped fend off the English. And I guess she's primarily is the reason why France, maybe not primarily, but a big reason why France was able to maintain its independence, because she was fighting for the freedom of France, right? And then, of course, Harriet Tubman, okay? That's one of my favorite movies is Harriet. I knew of Harriet Tubman, but I felt really drawn to watch that movie because I knew that she was part of free slaves, right in the US, but I had no idea that she claimed to have been getting messages from God, and that it was God. She was not that educated. I don't think she knew how to read or write. But she claimed she was getting messages from God, and somehow she was able to evade captors, and she was able to get slaves like free up to the north. And she would just get messages of like where they are, and she would be right. And then and I am getting chills. I can't even tell you how many people she saved, but it was a very large number, and none of them ever got caught, and nobody ever got hurt or killed while they were with her, is from what I understand. And so that's what this Anunnaki, I think, was probably from the GFL or somewhere. Obviously, this is a more high vibrational Anunnaki. But this is what he was saying, is that that's how you know that you're truly getting a message from God, is when you are fighting on behalf of freedom of a group of people or a group of anything. So then he brought it back to today in what's happening with the Epstein files and the all of the children that are being hurt. Oh my gosh. So I've been watching some Sean Ryan podcasts, and he's had a couple of people on there now who are advocating for children's like safety. And he had one particular woman, Elizabeth Phillips, I think, who is advocating for the shutdown of Camp Kanakuk, which I guess has had a very large number of reports of assault towards children. Like her brother, committed suicide because of all of the assault he experienced at this particular camp. And then he had another guest, Meg Applegate, I think. She is advocating for reform in the troubled teen industry of these boarding schools that seem to be very, very corrupt. They're basically treated like prisoners, and that's a whole thing. And then of course you have Tim Tebow, the football player, who is fighting on behalf of saving children from online pornography. So like, it's so cool to watch this tidal wave of change on behalf of the children, because that's where this Anunnaki was bringing me, was modern day now, that the slavery system that is currently happening is the children. And so he feels pretty confidently that anybody that is fighting on behalf of trying to save the children are truly getting messages from God, and that you should be a little wary of anybody who is denying that it's real, denying that it exists, working in the systems that are kind of sweeping things under the rug and covering things up. So, and I guess I kind of asked, like, what is the one thing that you would want humans to know, or that you think humans should know? And he said that it's okay to have been created by the hands of something else, but also understand that you are from God. Because two things can be true at the same time. And that that information can be suppressed because it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes if you learn that you have alien DNA, it can unlock a lot of wisdom and intelligence, knowledge, psychic abilities within you that end up making you more powerful. And so that part becomes a double-edged sword, because which path are you going to take after learning that information? Are you going to take the path of, I am my own God, and therefore I don't need a God, I don't have to listen to anything else because I am all powerful? Or are you going to take the path of, I am significantly more than what I've been told? How do I use this information to better humanity and to better the world? And so what he is saying is that we are on that precipice now. We are at that point, and that we have to make the right decision when it comes to having this information. This information is not a privilege. This is a right, but it also is a very large responsibility because it comes with great power. And obviously, with great power comes great responsibility. And he says, you are now being called into action. Let the information sit within your mind, within your DNA. Let it activate you. Allow the information to integrate into your being. And then you need to make a choice. And he forewarns anyone that if you make the choice of being self-serving and to be selfish and to not serve the whole, you will go down with the rest of them, because the prophecy has already been made that the ones that are fighting for unity are going to win. Unity, love, truth, and freedom. Whew, man, he's got me inspired. He does say that there is there's like a behavior of walking tall, like with your chest out, you know, straight on, like not cowering down, but there is this like tall walk tall, I guess, that is like an Anunnaki thing. And so that is a positive thing that we can take from the Anunnaki, is to just stand up, walk tall, be strong, be brave, and really just don't take anything from anybody that means you harm. Cool. Well, I think that's it for me, but I hope you liked the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Consider subscribing, and I will see you next time.